Yes, guys. So we are back. Mindset Tune Up. The show is back. We are actually on episode number 6. I put number 5, but doing a bit of work behind the scenes today to get in prep for tonight's show. I realized it's number 6. So this is episode number 6. Been a few weeks break where I've been for my operation, and I'm actually back in flow sooner than I thought. I kind of put a post out earlier in the week actually, talking about know yourself, and this is something that I'm quite big on. I've listened to the doctor's advice and I've been sensible in every step I can take since then. But I truly do feel that I got myself in the best condition before going in for the operation. And also I know my body and I know myself, and the progression since has been phenomenal, really, and mentally and physically. Right this minute, as I sit in front of the screen, I'm feeling really, really good, guys. My projects are all bouncing back. I'm feeling motivated. I'm feeling driven. And just being able to be active again and get moving has been a massive part of that. And as always, getting outdoors has been massive. So the biggest positive to everything that happened was I wasn't allowed to lift weights, which has obviously been a massive part of my life. But I was able to get outdoors and train outdoors, which kind of really brings in tonight's guests, because I met George when I went down to a retreat late last year. And he really stood out to me as a great character. I think his wealth of knowledge in nature really stood out. I think within the first few words we said to each other, he's feeding me some weird leaves and a mushroom. But the depth of knowledge he had around that was phenomenal. And in an environment where the potential was a lot of negativity, George really stood up with a lot of positive energy. And he really kind of resonated with myself as a good man out there to do good things, and to share a wealth of knowledge. And then in communication since, I've learned more about BeOne domestication and his partner, Amber. So I'm going to bring them both in now so they can introduce themselves a little bit better than I can do. And I'm really excited about this tonight because I think these guys are trying to do something really good in this world. And I feel this is going to be a show that you're going to be able to take a lot from. And even backstage before we went live, as we were talking, both Amber and George were telling me about some of the things that they've got going on. And they've also got some free stuff that they're also giving out and helping people with as well. So again, there's a lot to take from tonight. So exactly why I'm so excited to get this show back rocking and rolling. So guys, without further ado, I'm going to bring Amber and George in. Hey guys.
Hey Ben.
Hey everybody.
How are we both doing tonight? You okay?
Yeah, great to be here. Great to be here, and welcome to all the listeners as well. Yeah, nice to tell our story.
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, I probably did it in injustice, but I always like the guests to kind of talk a little bit more, because obviously they can go into a little bit more depth, and just talk a little bit more deep-hearted about who they are and what they do. So we can see some comments just starting to pop up and the views starting to grow now. So guys, can you just talk a little bit about yourselves first? Because I think that's a really interesting one. Personal journeys are key. And again, as anyone knows with myself, personal journeys are an interesting one, but something that really shows growth. But then leaning into how you guys formed BeOne domestication and what that stands as right now.
Definitely, yeah. And hi, Liam. Thanks for the comment. Yeah, excited to share today. So I think we were just talking about how to do this because our stories are so intertwined. But I think I'll try and go for my story, and then Amber, yeah, you'll pick up cool afterwards. So, I mean, the rewilding thing for me was a word that I first heard, and I probably heard it in a way where I actually took it on board in 2017. We started the journey before that point. So back in 2015, 16, we started to take more of a deeper look at our food, really. This is where the journey started. I had Crohn's disease. I was diagnosed in childhood with Crohn's disease. And until last year, until I achieved remission, I suffered with it for 21 years. So yeah, I have a letter on my wall up there from a consultant when after a colonoscopy, if anybody's ever had one of those, they're not very fun. But they looked and did that test, and it says no active Crohn's after 21 years. And we got there through rewilding, and not just the food played a massive part, of course, but also the mindfulness side of it, but sleeping more. I mean, I'll talk a little bit probably about my job at in the charity sector as well. I work 4 days a week for a charity, as well as running BeOne domestication with Amber. And I was on furlough for 3 months in lockdown, and it felt like a blanket had been lifted off my shoulders that I didn't even realize I'd been carrying this whole time. And maybe that contributed and kicked me over the line. I don't know. We're talking about stress, reducing stress and things like that. So yeah, my journey was dominated by Crohn's. I mean, if anybody's met me, they probably know I talk more about feet these days than Crohn's. And I do a lot of barefoot walking and running, and have come on my own journey of having bunions as well, and seeing my feet completely heal just through wearing more natural footwear, wearing toe dividers. And yeah, I went from a size 7 to a size 9, which is a very expensive thing to happen to you. If you ever want to buy all of your shoes again, just in a couple of sizes up, yeah, that's, I recommend.
What space of time was that over, George, if you don't mind me asking?
So the shoes was 2017. That was the bunions. That was when I heard rewilding. For anybody interested in rewilding, one of the first places I heard this word was a guy called Daniel Vitalis, and he's an American guy, and his podcast Rewild Yourself. He now runs the company WildFed, an amazing company in America. He has a TV show on the Outdoor Channel, and a really inspiring dude. And he kind of was the first person that stood up and spoke about rewilding in my world anyway. And he interviewed some of the people who make like Vibram 5 fingers, the toe shoes. Yeah. And he interviewed some of those people to talk about the kind of why podiatry is failing, basically. I mean, I went to a podiatrist with my feet and they said, oh, here's some lovely insoles. And I said, you haven't even watched me walk. How do you know I need insoles? You haven't watched me do anything. And so I was disillusioned, I think, a little bit, and there were answers out there. And luckily the NHS, especially with the Crohn's, they gave me a platform of health. They made me healthy. I was medicated for the whole 21 years until last year. And I'm really lucky.
Just to ask a couple of questions on that, just in case anyone's unsure. Can you talk to people, if you're happy to, kind of like what Crohn's is and the effects that had on you?
Absolutely. So I'm still showing the symptoms are related to that now. It's not Crohn's, but like psoriasis on an elbow, if anyone's ever seen anything like that, that kind of familiar thing we have. I had Crohn's explained to me once, and don't quote me on this as a doctor, but that it's similar to that, but inside the gut. So isolated parts of your gut inflame, and that's so Crohn's and colitis are similar. Crohn's is when there's isolated spots. Colitis is when your entire gut is inflamed. So sometimes with Crohn's, you see people actually have parts of their gut cut out and are really healthy after that. And I didn't need any of this. It was purely through things like fasting, eating plant-based diet. I still eat meat. I eat a lot less meat. I don't think maybe whether organic tipped it over, but I eat a lot more organic food now. It's hard to say. We'll talk a lot more about some of the tips, but yeah, that's my journey. It's Crohn's and toes basically got me here. And so, yeah, from the physical health side of things, learned a lot about how nature can guide the journey, definitely.
And so, hi, I'm Amber. Nice to have you all here this evening. Me and George met at university in Derby, and never knew that this was a journey that we'd be on nearly like 9-10 years later. We've come a real long way. And to be honest, when we first met, we weren't really nature lovers as such that we are now. For me, it was always something that I was really fond of. I've always been a photographer, and so I spent a lot of time outside doing landscape photography, nature photography, animals and things like that. And so nature always felt like a really safe space for me to be in, somewhere I felt unjudged, and also no time pressures. When you're out in nature, you can really just let go of your stress because there's nowhere else to be. There's nobody to make you anxious and to judge you. The trees really don't judge you, and there's no point stressing over things when you're out in nature because there's nothing you can do about your problems whilst you're there. So you might as well just be free and enjoy it. And so I always really found that was my safe place, and I enjoyed nature. And I was always really interested in psychology and people. I'm quite an emotional person, always have been, and I've always been interested in psychology and sociology and the way that people operate and the way that we think and treat and act around each other. And so I suppose it's a combination of both of those things for me that started us on our path together collaboratively into, for George, it was more his physical health, as he says, his Crohn's and his bunions. And for me, it was always more mental health. Why do I feel anxious? Why do I get depressed? What has brought me to this place in my life? And what can I do to feel better about it? I've had counselling, I've had CBT, currently still having therapy. There's not always good days. Life is a roller coaster, but I have lots of tips and tricks and things like that are in my toolbox that I know I can always refer back to should I need to, if I feel myself, slipping back into that dark place and letting the anxiety and that grey cloud hang over me. And so you could put BD, Beyond Domestication, down to a lot of things. We also went traveling in Australia, loved van life, loved the freedom of, pulling up somewhere, this is home for the night. Let's settle here and, enjoy the stars. And it really just grew from there quite naturally into Beyond Domestication. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about what we call the 7 practices. And we find that what we call the 7 practices really can improve your mental health and your well-being. And it's not as such as we don't tell people what to do, but we use the 7 practices to advise people to consider these aspects of your life and figure out what works for you, what makes your brain healthy, what makes your gut healthy, what makes your feet healthy, and beyond that as well. Hence the name Beyond Domestication. It's, about breaking out of these boundaries and these sort of traps that we find ourselves in the norms of society, and, exploring wider than that about what feels good and why, and let's get more of that into our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe that's a little insight.
Wow, I love it. That's powerful. Very, very powerful. Guys, to jump in, George and Amber obviously aren't just business partners, they are a couple. So I thought I'd just bring that
married
in.
In May,
Engaged. So just so you all do know that. But I think a few quite powerful things just in the intro there, and which I'm gonna jump to George before I come back to Amber. But I think that this is something I've touched upon in my podcast quite a bit, going in deep with Ollie, my partner there, and we've talked about how lockdown actually had a positive impact on a lot of people. I appreciate a lot of negativity happened, and a lot of people suffered quite tragic events during COVID.
Yeah,
absolutely.
A lot of people, their perspective in life really took a positive shift, including mine.
Yeah.
And just something you've highlighted there, which was you start to free up in time and were able to potentially view things a little bit differently, capitalize on things in a different manner. And I think that's a really powerful. And we spoke about this with Ollie. We spoke about the fact that it potentially be about 5 to 10 years before people look back as a community and actually realize how much of a positive impact the aspects of lockdowns and COVID had, rather than just looking at the kind of the negative tragedies that happened, which is not to neglect that or take that away, but it is to help show that people realize potentially what's most important to them in life, and to make some big bold decisions to make more positive steps in life as well. So that's something you mentioned that I just wanted to bring in. And the other one was it was interesting as you were speaking about the barefoot and about these shoes that have, and obviously they're not new. I say new, but they're not new. Where obviously they are basically like you're walking barefoot. And as I was thinking, it's really interesting, kind of coming from a kind of an ish sports background, the shoe starts to develop to aid performance.
Definitely.
So runners and whatever sport it may be, their footwear has been developed to give them a better performance. But unfortunately, that's had a negative effect to the body, whether tighter calf, tighter hamstrings, foot positions, or like you say, the foot actually shrinks instead of grows, and all of these things. And it's as you were speaking then, I was just thinking about I got given a pair of shoes late last year, and I had a carbon fiber something in it with the gel and all of this kind of stuff. And yeah, it makes it spring fast, but like you say, that's potentially causing more damage than good. So that's a really interesting aspect as well. And then Amber, something that really resonated with me when you were speaking was when you're talking about the being out in nature, just being a safe space and not being judged. And that is such a powerful thing, because I say to a lot of people, when I kind of go out on my own and you get to the top of a mountain and you stood around a reservoir, the feeling of peace that I find myself at that moment, no matter what's going on in my life, and it can be quite hard. It can be caught, like you saying, some negative thinking from the past or something that's happened. And it's not the training that gets that out of me. It's when it gets to a certain position and it's just like a feeling of awe. And you just stood, and I struggle to describe what that feeling is to someone unless you're there. But the way you described it to me meant a lot, which it does feel like a safe space. And also you're not judged, because it's beautiful to say nature isn't judging, it's probably loving you more than anything.
Absolutely.
Right. I actually thought that was really powerful. And you two coming together, and I think even though you've got slightly different journeys, I think that sometimes is an even better thing, because it really creates unique things with different experiences and different strengths, should I say. And you'll have both learned lessons on your journeys as well. So I'm excited now to dig into Beyond Domestication a little bit more, because I think there's one thing that I want to dig into a little bit first, because I even had to do a bit of research, kind of heard the word, but rewilding, Can we define that? Can we let people know exactly what that is? Because even I thought I knew it, and then I thought, you know what, I better check before we go on to the show. So before, I know the 7 practices are within that, but if someone was listening to that word or heard that word, can you guys just kind of dig into that a little bit for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So rewilding in a traditional context, if you Google it and get the definition, it's all about conservation. So can we return land back to nature and allow it to rewild and to be in its original state? So for example, if you take a farmer's field with one monocrop on it, whatever that might be, and you allow that the opportunity to just go fallow and just return it back to pasture and just don't do anything with it, you're rewilding that field. And there are things we can do actively as well, like bringing beavers back, introducing keystone species to help the planet rewild. In the context we use it, it's all about what have we lost with our connection to nature and how can we as people rewild actually. And there's no official definition that includes well-being in there, but for me it's one and the same. If we heal the planet, we probably have to heal ourselves first actually. What we find most of the time is that I maybe selfishly want the planet to survive more than I want my own health. Maybe that's the case. And this story that we're telling and the 7 practices and the way that we connect to nature helps people to help the planet as well, because we live closer to nature and we understand its value. And things like foraging and spring water and cold water swimming and forest bathing, air bathing, or what we call it. Anytime we can spend time in nature, well, we're going to protect that space, aren't we? When things like HS2 come along, and there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of the value of that place because we don't spend time there. So we hope to give people the reason to connect, definitely. So that's rewilding from our perspective. Bit of a lengthy explanation there. What would you say?
Yeah, and I would just add to that it's just about breaking those sort of social norms that we sometimes find ourselves trapped in, and definitely don't mean to cause anybody offense, but sometimes we can be lazy in life. It's easy to grab a ready meal, it's easy to stay up late and binge watch telly and have blue screens in front of us all night. We're socialized that this is normal, and that's just what everybody does. But I think it's really important to reflect on what feels good for you, and is that really what you want in your life? And that's what we think rewilding is looking at 7 practices. So I keep mentioning it, so I might as well tell you what they are. It's food, water, air, sunlight, movement, mindfulness, and sleep. And these are the practices that over time we've kind of developed and, looked in detail at all of these things. And we think that everybody really needs to build a connection that feels personal to you and feels good and healthy to you, and just break that cycle of fitting in with the social norm and doing what everybody else does. Go out there and try some wild foods, learn a bit about foraging. Like you say, Ben, during COVID, I started growing things on my balcony, started growing plants and food and veg, herbs and things. And I'd never done that before. And it felt so empowering that I've nurtured this from a seed to something that now I'm chopping up and cooking and putting on the plate for me and George. And there's something about that practice that makes that so much tastier. It really does. It feels really good. And we did something recently where we actually went and we had a deer with a chap in the woods, and he taught us how to skin that and prep it and get all of the meat cuts off of it, and we brought it home and we ate it all over a lengthy period of time, and I shared it with some of my family, and even my family was saying this meat tastes so good, and the fact that it was killed on Friday, we cut it up on Sunday and we ate some of it on Sunday, that process itself just feels like you're so connected. It fills your heart. It really does. And that's the only way I can describe rewilding for me is, a feeling in your heart of I'm doing something right and I'm doing it for me because it feels good, to be honest.
And not everyone has to go out there and skin an animal.
No, absolutely.
But it was really funny. It was really funny how skinning the animal felt so normal. It was like I'd done it a million times before.
It's ancestral, wasn't it?
It was really strange, yeah. And there's maybe a lot to be said for these practices that we do have this human memory. I mean, we've evolved over 3 million years as hominids when we found fire. And I talk a lot about our ancestors, and even 35,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, we were operating in these amazing diverse communities and performing these skills all the time. And sometimes you pick up something like I do archery, and you pick up the bow, and I know we've not been doing that as long, like 8,000 years, but humans have been doing that a long time. And it just feels, these movements that we can do feel to me like I was born to do them. I mean, this time tomorrow, I'm just checking the time. Yeah, we'll definitely have our tent up at this time. We're camping on Dartmoor for the next 2 nights.
Yeah, you
and
said that, yeah.
Putting a heavy pack on and traipsing over the moors, it's just so wholesome for me personally. And I know you feel the same, but it almost felt like when we first started doing it, my body was like, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Why have you not been doing this for years?
But I highly encourage people, grow something. Now is the perfect time. Plant some seeds, get some tomato seeds, and, you know, stick them in a window, let them start growing, and then put them out on your balcony, your garden, whatever it might be, and just see how you feel about that. I think it feels really empowering, and it's really set us off on a journey that this is what we want to do for the rest of our lives. You know, we want to self-sustain and work to live for us in the long term. You know, not to make money for the man, but to provide my own food. You know, rear my own animals and have those for food, and build a community of like-minded people where, you know, let's get back in touch with the things that are a little bit more basic, that potentially have a little bit more personal meaning to us than the 9 to 5 and the sort of the rat race.
Well, I think that I think firstly you can tell how passionate you both are and knowledgeable, which is an amazing thing. I think that my wife she grew stuff last year, and the passion she found within that as well, it really brought her something. She was planting both plants and like vegetables and things to eat as well, and it was exciting for her, and just brought something out. And like you say, it takes it away. And you talk kind of like about the social norm kind of aspects, and I think that that's something that I'm quite big on, because I've taken myself away from that, which was quite heavily leading my life, and I did it because I knew it was leading me in a way I didn't want to go. So I'm quite outspoken as an individual, because I know a lot of people do get trapped in that because they're afraid of losing friends, they're afraid of what's on the other side and all of these kinds of things. But I can show my journey in the fact of, if you can be brave enough and say to yourself, I'm not happy right now, there's something not quite right, whether it's what I'm doing, the people that are surrounding me, the way I'm thinking or feeling, whatever it may be. Exactly. If you can make that step and start to find yourself, and like you say, I think this is why this episode is going to be quite powerful, to talk about nature and the outdoors, because that transition for me is completely transitioned my life as well. And I think certain aspects within these 7 especially have been very powerful, but I can guarantee all of them are going to have a massive impact. So just to understand a little bit about this, so before you delve into the 7 practices, can you talk a little about how they came about? Like, why 7? Was there more you could have added in? Was that a bit of an argument in terms of one of you throwing more in, or was it quite solidified? And also, are they in order? Or are they not? Again, is it just you could pick and choose, or would you say there's an order to it? Just questions to bring out before we delve into each one.
I wouldn't say there's an order to it. I think we say them in an order because it flows naturally for us now. I think they all in some way hold equal weight and importance to all of our well-being.
The first 4 are the elements.
Yeah.
Food, water, air, sunlight, earth, wind, air, fire. Yeah. So they kind of go together, don't they?
George really started the journey with Beyond Domestication during lockdown, and sort of having lots of just before lockdown, having lots of gripes in life about, you know, our disconnection to nature, meaningful work, meaningful relationships, all of these things. Go on, I'll let you take it.
So just a shout out to 2 people in the chat as well. So one of the people we're going Dartmoor with is in the chat, Dan. So great to see you watching it, Dan, and one of the guys from our retreat as well is listening, Richie. So yeah, good to see you both. I mean, I remember where we were sat when we started it. It was we were just sat on the sofa in Amber's mum's house after Christmas in 2019, and we were just sat like, these things work, like food, water, air, sunlight, movement. I'll tell you what it was movement, meditation, sleep.
Nice.
There was another one, tools, and then there were 2 others, community and sustainability. So there was 10 originally, if that's 10 in my head. Is that 10? Yeah. And then this was a book. So we planned the book, didn't we? The book is written. If anybody is a book publisher that's listening, hi, I'd like to meet you.
Wow.
That'd be great.
So you've written a book?
Yeah, so I have 100,000 words in a book. I can talk a little bit more later about how I wrote this. It all happened during furlough. It was really scary, a whirlwind of productivity, wasn't it? Whilst Amber was still to the grindstone, working full time for her in her job. So yeah, the book was where it all started. Actually, the first thing that ever happened was a book, Beyond Domestication, and then we quickly realised that tools wasn't really relevant. I mean, there's probably a whole other topic in itself, the idea that we've domesticated tools, and how they've maybe even domesticated us, like looking at our relationship with things like chairs and those kind of products, all the way up to the internet and the metaverse. And maybe it's a whole other book in itself, but it wasn't a natural element. We weren't rewilding with tools, were we? So we took that out. And then with the book, the context of the book was actually then became sort of the first 7 chapters that became the 7 practices were all about us, like inputs into our body. We input movement, we input mindfulness, i.e. the practice of spending time with ourselves, either reflecting in the past or preparing future plans. And we spend time sleeping. And the last 2 were almost outputs. If we look after ourselves, we look after our community. If we look after our community, we look after the planet. And so those 2 community and some sustainability aspects almost became like products of the 7 practices. So the last 2 chapters in the book are about community and sustainability, our responsibility when we're well, which is maybe something we all have, is to then turn to all the others in our community and think, well, how can I help other people to be well? And then when, as a human community, we are all well and we're thriving, can we then turn to the planet, which we now need to do urgently? But we need to be well as a society first before we can do this, as we know, because it's not happening, is it? And then that was it. So luckily, I mean, do you want to tell the story about the name change from meditation to mindfulness, about the advisors?
Yeah, we once we decided that we wanted to move forward with Beyond Domestication and really start sharing this message with other people because it works so well for us, and this is all about everybody experiencing something that feels good for them and using these practices in the best way for you. We decided that let's make this a business. Let's start looking at how we can sort of promote this to a wider audience beyond the book. And so we got together a group of really great individuals who we've met throughout our professional careers. We had hypnotherapists, the owner of a bank, we had a teacher, a doctor, all sorts of people joined our board because they believed in Beyond Domestication and the message that we were trying to spread out. And then one of our advisors, Tony Alexander, an expert in NLP and hypnotherapy, put a great debate on the table about the difference between mindfulness and meditation, and which was it that we were actually talking about. And so we changed direction there with that one in the end, and we felt that mindfulness was more all-encompassing, in terms of, you can relate it back to food, really tasting the food that you're eating, smelling it, feeling it, slowing down as you eat it, having gratitude for it. That's mindfulness. I wouldn't necessarily call that meditation. And so we wanted it to be a bit broader, and that's where we decided to make that switch. And I feel like 7's quite a special number, isn't it? It holds a lot of meaning for different people. And so it just felt like a really great number to have, the 7 practices. And yeah, we've been pretty confident with it ever since, in the direction that we're moving in. And we've got lots of really great things coming out in the future, as well as the book. And the public will soon be able to get their hands on what we're calling the 7 Practices Challenge, which I mentioned to you just before we started, Ben. It's essentially an advent calendar, but unfortunately, instead of a chocolatey treat, you open the door and you have a challenge which relates to the 7 practices, and you can pick which kind of challenge you want that to be. So it could be something to do today, could be something to do this week, this month, or this year. Some of them are a little bit more challenging to plan. So, there are things in there like spending 24 hours in a wild space. You might not be able to do that today, this week, or this month. So you've got a year to plan it, but it's up to you to take the challenge and use it as you see fit. And there's lots of tips and guidance and things that will go alongside that for people as to why these things are important. So yeah, lots of really great things have come from the 7 practices, and we're really just excited to share it with everybody else, and get that feedback as to how did it work for you? How do you feel after getting back in touch with the 7 practices?
It's not the tips themselves. And a lot of the times, especially when we're talking about something like Crohn's, if I'm helping somebody that's experiencing Crohn's, they can almost want me to just tell them what the path is. And as much as I can tell them what my path was,
there's no magic cure.
It's the awareness. Absolutely. And I say food to you, Ben, and you're already thinking, I shouldn't have eaten that the other day, and I say sleep to you and you think, I know I don't get enough sleep. We know. And it's more the fact that actually I say sunlight and you go, I should go out every day, shouldn't I? And when you are sat in, because potentially hybrid working, you don't have to leave, you can order food to your house. Actually, at 11 o'clock, when you do have 20 minutes, you go and have a cup of tea outside instead of in the lounge, because you think about that awareness that, hold on a second, this scientifically, I know the sun helps me and gives me these benefits, in at least during this time of the year, especially.
So in terms of, and I love everything you've said, and I think the having kind of the challenge sounds awesome. I'm excited to see that and hopefully be a part of that as well.
I know you're up to the challenge. I know
yeah,
you are.
I'm excited, and I just love the idea behind it because it's catchy and it'll engage people in. People kind of, I feel it's a good way to get people involved, and it kind of leads into this question, which is, say you have someone who, and again, I think that it's interesting, and I've had this conversation with a few people in terms of where the world's heading with technology, and you're kind of trying to bring people back in the direction that I feel is important to go, because I think that technology is amazing, and I'm pro and con. I think it's done amazing things for my business, and it's done amazing things for actually finding new people and engaging with the right people, and finding a good support network. So I am a big supporter, but also I know it has caused a lot of negativity, a lot of controversy. It has affected people's mental health and all of these aspects. But I think technology is only ever going to grow. Now, my question for you guys is, because of the way the high percentage of the world is set up now, whether it is within, like you talk about, the social norm, it is with around technology and tablets and computers and phones, and then drinking in the pubs or whatever, going shopping, whatever it may be. If someone was at the point of thinking, right, this sounds appealing, is there a way, or again, as you've talked about, it's right for them? How do they break it down so they understand, right, okay, so I might take one of the practices, or I might take them all, but take small bits? Like, how do you break this down, how they can make that applicable themselves? Do you have a tip in terms of how to do that? Because obviously the other thing is, you might have two people in the same scenario in terms of how they live their life, which is very far away from your 7 practices, but one may pick it up very quickly. Again, it could be past experiences, or they could just be more inclined to in tune to this sort of stuff, and one could be quite resistant or not get their head around it. So where do you come through in terms of helping people understand how to make this the most applicable to themselves, if that makes sense?
It's a good question. Yeah, go on, Pam.
Technology can be our best friend and our worst nightmare all in one, and we have to embrace it for, you know, for all its warts and all. Blue blocking glasses, for example, protecting George and I's screens from the blue light that we're receiving, because the sun has set and it's no longer natural for us to, you know, receive this blue light into our eyes. We feel that we sleep much better for, you know, wearing these blue blocking glasses, and I highly advise people to give it a go. You might feel a bit silly wearing them, but, you know, we're trying to make it fashionable.
I feel super cool. I was going to say, speak for yourself. I feel super cool. We both debate, like, when we go out in public, only one of us wears them. But we live in Camden, so we can get away with it, right?
Definitely. But we use technology to, you know, spread the message of the 7 practices. So we're on social media. We've got a fabulous website that George built, and George has also produced an online challenge, an online course that you can go on and do. And this is one of the free products that you mentioned, Ben, for people to go and, you know, have a little try and see some of the tips that we're giving, sharing some of our experience, and put it into practice and see if it feels good. You know, evaluate it at the end of the day and think, do I feel better today? Did I sleep better? You know, does my gut feel better? Do you want to talk a bit more about the course, the online course, and what that is?
So outside of Beyond Domestication, I work for an amazing charity called the Directory of Social Change. And through that role, I work as a trainer and a consultant in the charity sector. And so I do a lot of management and leadership training, productivity training. And what it keeps coming back around to, actually, people are working themselves to the bone and not being very effective. And we talk a lot about well-being on the online course, but we also talk about productivity in work and being able to help people use nature to be productive as well. We're sat on the floor right now. I sit on the floor every day, or I stand and stand at a standing desk. And so we have a variety of workplaces we work from. And so, yeah, we have a free online course for anybody, and it's 7 lessons that are all 10 minutes long. And each lesson is designed to help you understand each of the practices more from a well-being perspective, a productivity perspective. And then we give a little bit of an insight into domestication as well. There is this big word we kind of haven't explained yet that, if anybody doesn't know, well, can I talk a little bit about domestication now, Ben? Is that okay?
Jump in, of course you can.
Just want to say massive love as well to James, who's just commented, into Liam as well. He's been leaving loads of comments, but James especially is the reason why me and Ben know each other. The reason why we met. From the Unguarded Warrior Retreat. And actually, I posted a blog about the Unguarded Warrior Retreat today, and who stood next to me in that photo, but it's you, Ben.
Is it?
And,
yeah, I need to check that out.
Just for the listeners, just for the listeners, when we met, this is the first time I ever did cold water with Kev, with Breatholution, your friend Kev, and we got into the water, and I was suffering, and I looked to the right, and who sat there with the biggest grin on their face but Ben? And I'm just looking at him like, for God's sake, I'm in pain. And Kev's going to me, if you're on fire, you're supposed to feel on fire. It's fine. Yeah. If your neck really hurts, that's normal. And I'm sat there looking at you, and you're in the Zen mode, Ben, which is amazing. So yeah, big love. Welcome, James. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, James, what a guy.
Yeah.
Amazing things as well.
Absolutely, yeah. The Unguarded Warrior Retreat, amazing. So domestication, it's a big word. It comes from domestic animals, all of that. And in the book and on our website, we talk about it a little bit more. But the idea that over the last 12,000 years, if anybody's not familiar with that period of time, it's called the agricultural revolution, when we started to invent things like cement and farming, and we're able to really rapidly progress from being small communities isolated with their own individual culture to these big groups of people living together within cities with a lot of food and armies and taking over. And the periods of time that's taken place since then has occurred with a lot of domestication of plants. Things like broccoli, kale, tomatoes, bananas. These are all fake food that we've created. I'm not saying they're not good for you. These foods can be good for us as well, but they're not wild. They can't live on their own. If you chucked some tomato seeds outside, they wouldn't survive because they'd be eaten by the wild animals and pests and insects. They need to be mostly sprayed or looked after, at least by humans, to survive. And so we've gone from this really wild life, which we were living in wild landscapes, grounded to the floor, minimal footwear and wild food and water and cold water all the time. The seasonal change, sleeping long hours in the winter, sleeping less in the summer. The opposite of what we're doing now, actually, where we have really ripped six packs in the summer, whereas actually we should be getting really fat in the summer on all the fruits and things, and probably be leaner in the winter when there's less food available to eat. And we've kind of flipped loads of things on our head. And there
isn't that crazy, because that then comes down to how someone wants to look, because someone will have to top off. So again, it comes down to the appearance you want to have.
I get it.
The health.
No carbs before marbs, Ben. You know the rules.
Yeah. George, one quick question I wanted to jump in on then was, you mentioned some foods then.
Yeah,
and,
go. Yeah.
So in terms of where you said, don't paraphrase me, but you didn't say they weren't natural, but they weren't. You were talking about like broccoli and tomatoes. So what? How did you mean by that? Like, did they not? I don't even know how to put this into words, because it confused me.
No, you're doing a good job. It's a tricky topic. Go on, do you know?
So you kind of gave me the impression basically that they were made by humans. They weren't just natural from the earth, which is mind blowing if that's the right thing that I'm getting at. So could you please delve into whether I'm chatting rubbish there, or whether that's.
Talk about the banana. The banana is a really good example of this.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. They've been cultivated over time, over years, and some of them thousands of years,
genetically modified
from the original wild plant. So imagine 12,000 years ago, you're sat there with a wild grain, and you plant it, and you get one that grows a little bit higher. So you only take the seeds from that one, and you only ever grow that one. And over time, you slowly start selecting for the traits that you want to see. And when potentially that taller plant, maybe it's also more susceptible to insects. So you have to protect it from the insects, and you have to spray it, and you have to protect it. And we end up with this plant that has no natural defenses, but potentially we can grow it en masse in these agricultural fields and cause a lot of soil health and damage there. But we're able to produce this amount of food. But the natural defenses are actually what we're looking to eat a lot of the time. That's where the bitterness in some wild foods and other foods like rocket as well, that bitterness is actually good for us. So the banana, there used to be the banana. I can't remember which way round it is. I believe the old one was called the Gross Michael, and the one that we eat now is called the Cavendish. And all fruits like that, like a banana or an apple that you've eaten, are all clones, by the way. So unless you've gone to an orchard and picked from a tree, you're eating a cloned apple or a cloned banana. And what happened with this cloned banana? Yeah, right. Yeah. What happened with this cloned banana, the Gross Michael, is that we planted it in Malaysia It's not naturally from there. It's that area. We were planting it around the world to be able to grow it around the world, planted it in the ground. And this fungal infection that's always been in this part of Malaysia, LP4, I think the fungal infection is called, went up into the bananas and then spread out through the supply chain and completely wiped out the banana in like the 60s, the Gross Michael banana. And so now they have the banana, the Cavendish, this new style of banana, but is also massively under threat from this fungal infection, LP4. And technically what we're doing is we're getting rid of all the resilience in our network where we had all of these independent species of bananas, all slightly different from each other. And we took one that's really good for agriculture and created just one variant of it. And then now we're putting that whole supply chain at risk by potentially diseases that have always been in the soil in some part of the world, and planting plants that don't belong there, haven't evolved there, and then corrupting our entire system. It's really actually quite a fragile network we're putting our food network on.
Where do you stand in eating those foods personally?
I don't think we have much choice, and they are. So I'm being unfair by calling them fake foods. They're whole foods. They're whole foods, plant-based. You can go and live a long, healthy life just subsisting on food like that. Maybe we have to consider our relationship to wild food as well. And can we eat 1% of our diet wild? If that, can we incorporate occasionally wild food and take some of that nutrients en masse in those opportunities? And we all actually do eat wild food, blackberries, things like that. But can we take advantage of it from a health perspective, but also from a planet perspective? Everything that grows wild is free water and free solar. So it's,
and this kind of all basically, I would assume, came down to money inconvenience for businesses in terms of making more money by creating these foods that are more sustainable. And rather than, like you say, talking about when you talk, I remember again when we were on the retreat and you took us on the walk and you were naming plants that I was blown away by that you could just find and show. Is that, again, is it the case that there wouldn't be that amount for people? They would have to grow more to feed people. Do you know what I mean? Or is it a case that actually if you personally could go out and find these things again? But I assume, again, you've got to be careful with that in case you eat something safe or something poisonous. Or is that not, again, because that's something I've always wondered as well. It's a very random question, but I think you two are the perfect ones to answer it for me. It's been bubbling in my head, which is, how did people start to realize what we could eat and what we couldn't in this world? Like, do you think there was a case of back in the day, people dying because they were eating things they thought they could eat? Or do you think, like you've talked about, things had just been innate within us? We were just creatures that knew what at that time was right to eat. Sorry if that's taken us off topic a little bit.
No, I love this topic.
No, it's really important to touch on this. And I think, like, ancestrally, people had to try wild foods because it was all that was available. Tesco wasn't around the corner with a chicken wrapped up ready for you to take off the shelf. Your only option was to go out and to try a small piece of whatever this food was, and maybe try another small piece the next day and the next day and the next day. And after a week, if you're still feeling fine, you can be pretty sure that that's safe to eat. And that's how our culture developed.
Apply it to skin first.
Or apply it to your skin, rub it. Do you get a rash? If you get a rash, you probably don't want to digest that. Definitely don't advise anybody to go out and do this these days. If you do not know your wild foods and your mushrooms, please don't go and pick something and try and assume that because it looks friendly. It is. There's lots of wild plants out there that look super edible and really attractive. They're not. I would say it is really accessible to learn. George and I haven't always known these things, but it's a path that we've chosen to go on over the last few years to start investigating this. There are some really, really great books. If you're interested in mushrooms, there's the Edible Mushroom book, which outlines all of the edible mushrooms and all of their similar looking poisonous counterparts that you might want to avoid. And so I think books are a really good safe space to go. The Forager's Handbook as well is another one. The internet, I would say, is maybe a bit of a scary place. There's probably some misinformation out there. With the books, you can probably be, rest assured that you're a little bit safer. And then actually, we've been out on a lot of foraging walks. Just Google it. If it's something that you're interested in learning about, have a Google. And there's plenty of people out there doing it. And it's something that we are developing ourselves now. We're going to start hosting walks on Hampstead Heath for people to come and sort of have a sensory experience with us. And, you know, we'll talk about the 7 practices, but we'll definitely incorporate some sort of foraging and, you know, teas and things like that you can forage for. You know, stinging nettles are a really good place to start. If you're interested, I suggest go out and grab some stinging nettles, wear gloves if you're not sure how to sort of pick them safely. But if once you boil water with stinging nettles, they're not going to sting you anymore, and they make a really nice tea.
It just replace spinach.
Yeah, it does.
You can have a tea.
And it's really good for.
You made that down at the Unguarded Warrior Retreat.
You guys will have it.
It's great for inflammation. And you know, medicine used to be plants. We now have drugs which are man-made and manufactured, but prior to that, food was medicine. You know, and it still is. If you know what you're picking, there are so many health benefits.
Only recently it's changed,
to go in and picking wild foods. Another little tip for you all is mushrooms in the UK, and only in the UK. If you're from outside the UK, this is not true for you. But you can pick any mushroom in the UK, and by touch, it's not going to harm you. So pick mushrooms, have a little look at them, have a feel, have a smell. Until you know what you're picking, and you know 100%, don't put it in your mouth. Or, you know, find somebody who can guarantee that for you. But go out there and experiment. Mushrooms are awesome. They're really exciting and they're so intriguing to look at. But yeah, there's no mushroom that's too poisonous in the UK for you to pick with your hands. But they're not all edible by any means.
I'm making a note, by the way, up here. I've got a note of the books, and so we can give people them in the show notes. And
well, one thing I was going to ask was, I was going to say one thing, and then I was going to ask you a question. The one thing is that I've seen this a lot, and it's really interesting, the amount of people with it could be anything from a disease to a skin. It could be a skin disease, it could be a health issue, and they get that frustrated that medicine, in terms of pills and going down the route of seeing a doctor and being fed pills after pills and cream after cream isn't working. They actually have enough. What do they actually do? They go back to looking at things like the things that they're eating, and it's like they wouldn't say that the first approach is to go to the doctor and get put on pills and creams and stuff, and then when they realize that isn't working and they've had such enough of what's happening, they start to look at their diet, and it's crazy, and then they'll start to bridge it back, and it's just amazing that isn't transitioning in sooner, which I hope with more awareness it can do. And I think where what's leading was, you've got a lot of knowledge, you're talking about these books and things now, which George is making a note of, but in terms of your advice and information with food on the 7 practices in regards to what you do in your courses and the website and things like that, how much of this do you go into, just so people can understand? So regarding food as an entity, in terms of your setup here, where do you go with that without giving too much information away that would stop anyone venturing in?
No, we want to give everything away. Absolutely. If we could click our fingers and we could have everything in everybody's accessible for everybody, we would do that instantly, wouldn't we? Go on.
I think it depends what method you want to come to us through. Like I say, we've got the challenge coming out. There's the online course. There's heaps of information on our social media that we post on regularly. George also writes blogs. There's lots of different ways. We're also doing coaching and mentoring sessions for people.
That is what I recommend.
It for a more personalized touch. Yeah.
You mentioned at the start, I hope this is right before I say it out loud live, but you're giving an hour of free coaching. Is that right? Yeah.
And you can pick between us, and I will be offended if you don't pick me. No, it's not true. Absolutely. I mean, there's you can do the online course straight away. You can sign up now, and I can tell you what worked for us. Or you can come to us and say, this is what I feel like, and we can adapt what we say to you, and it is completely different for some people. And a lot of what we do is sharing resources that we've stolen from other experts, and some amazing people that have helped me, and some models diet which don't include cutting out any food. I still eat donuts, and I love donuts and snacks and things like that, and I still eat pretty much, can say 3 nights a week, 4 nights a week. We probably don't eat that well, do we? We might have a nice dinner, but we eat snacks. But my diet that I take, it completely allows me to do that, and that's what works for me. And I would share anything like that. Whole food, plant-based.
Liam's just shouted out, podcast guys, please tell me that you are having a podcast. So I think we want to hear more of this. So in there, guys.
Yes, yeah. Do you know what?
George has been pressuring me about this, and it's just so out of my comfort zone. But you've broken that today, Ben. So watch this space, Liam. Maybe soon we'll get on
think
there.
I agree with Liam. Like, what I love about doing this is the fact that I'm interested in the guests that come on. So I've learned off every guest I've spoken to something of value. I'm intrigued. I'm asking questions. I'm learning, and I go away with it as well. And I think I spoke to George briefly on voice notes, and originally it was something that I wanted to push before, but it's definitely something I want to push after, which is coming out with you guys. Hopefully I can drag Kev into it as well, where we video you two taking me and Kev through some aspects, because I think
careful
that's
what you wish for.
where, I want to put, that's not for me in a selfish way. It's not just to show people. I want to learn this sort of stuff, and again, that's for me to gain my knowledge. But at the same time, if we can video it and show that journey as well, we're giving people that understanding and knowledge at the same time. Because honestly, I can't. It was fascinating. It was only probably about 20-minute walk, and James is still watching. So James got George to take us on a walk, and it started in the dark, and it came to sunlight, which was beautiful on its own. But the eyes you had for just different aspects, and we're talking, and the knowledge you had, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And again, that's being present. And you talked about mindfulness before, and I didn't want to interrupt, but I think even the way you described mindfulness to me, and I do a lot of different types of meditation, but mindfulness, just being present in terms of, like you said, slowing down, enjoying, tasting, trying not to think of anything other than the aspects of what you are doing is for me a form of meditation. But I do agree with how you classed it as mindfulness. But again, when we were out on the walk, I was that at peace. I wasn't thinking about anything else. And then when George was telling me something, because I was so at peace, I was really taking in exactly what I was saying and very in the zone. And I think that's a phenomenal thing. So definitely that's something that I'd love to be able to do with you guys. And I think we have kind of briefly touched upon it. But the knowledge you're shining tonight is highlighted. And yeah, I'll be tuning into your podcast for sure. I think that's an amazing thing.
Yay.
Amazing. Well, thank you for the encouragement. Yeah,
I love it. So just to touch on a few of the others. So in terms of movement, where do you guys, and again, I'm trying to just help anyone that could be listening and trying to gather an understanding. I think one thing that you mentioned today, which is the fact you can't tell that you're cross-legged and sat down now, but you are doing. And one thing I noticed the other day was my son was asleep, so I took my laptop downstairs and put it on, like kind of like the kitchen. It's not a table; it kind of comes out and drops down. So I stood, but suddenly I felt so uplifted. And then I was on a work call and I was moving, and it energized me to be up and moving about and not sat down like you say. So I think in terms of movement, where a lot of people do sit down for either a driving job or a desk job, whatever it may be, but then you could have someone who is on the feet a lot more. So their movement will be slightly different. Where do you gain traction in terms of advocating the right movement, and what would that look like to you? I know I appreciate it will be different for different people. So that's trying to understand where that aspect is from you guys.
All of us can benefit from these two movements. And there's a guy called Ido Portal. Have you heard of Ido Portal, Ben?
I think you have, yeah. He's into crazy poses and movements like animal.
This is my guy, yeah. If anybody's watched Conor McGregor do the arm thing when he does training forms, so Ido Portal was Conor's movement trainer for a period of time. And one thing that really landed with me, and I think he did an interview with Daniel Vitalis, the guy I mentioned earlier. I think he did a Rewild Yourself, but he's also done a really good interview with London Real, Brian Redban. And he said two things, and I don't know whether he still says this, but this is what I took from him at the time, that we need to reconnect to our flat foot squat and to our hang. And I mean, you're going to get me to flat foot squat now, aren't you? But being in that position where you're having your feet flat and then just like being in this squat, it looks like I'm going to the toilet, basically. This position is something so restorative for health, and it helps to stretch out the knees, the ankles. It helps to align the hips, helps to bring everything back to symmetry, helps to put elasticity back into the joints. You do a lot of movement, a lot of running. You train in the gym with weights. We need to be able to rest in this squat, in this flat foot squat. He says half an hour a day. We should be in this flat foot squat, giving our body the opportunity to be stretching all the fascia. We stretch our hands out in front of us the connection between our toes there, all through the legs and up the back and out the toes and out the fingers. And so the flat foot squat, massive for us.
As somebody who's kind of suffers with a bit of back pain, actually, if I'm stood still and, upright for too long, the flat foot squat is a really nice stretch to just take you back out of that. It takes a little bit of practice to get comfortable in the balance, but that's all it is. As with anything in life, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So, have a try, see if you can get your feet flat on the floor and get as low as you can into a comfortable squat, and just see how long you can hold it there for. Test yourself, see if you can get a new personal best later on in the week.
It's quite a natural position in kind of like the eastern side of the world, isn't it? Would it be right?
It was natural for all of us then.
Right,
it used to be natural for all of us.
Yeah, but before we had sofas, we didn't sit on the floor all the time. We just squatted down into a comfortable position, and that was a comfortable position for people to rest in. We've just lost touch with that as we've domesticated over thousands of years.
If you're not going to the toilet like that, you're not engaging the muscles in your bowel properly either. You're probably not going really completely to the toilet and emptying your gut either, which is a really scary one. This is a real thing, by the way. Google squatty potty. This is something that we can use in front of our toilets to help raise our legs up away from the toilet. I use our bin. It's not anything fancy, our little bathroom bin. Maybe this helped me achieve remission for Crohn's.
I think so.
The opportunity to clean out the gut and have that in that whole space. So the flat foot squat, alongside the flat foot squat, the opposite of that, hanging. We've evolved in the trees, and our shoulders and our bodies still expect that brachiation, that like when the arm goes behind us. And I mean, if anybody hasn't done the monkey bars in the last year, go and do the monkey bars.
Good luck.
Yeah.
do the monkey bars and send the video in, because that'd be epic to see everyone trying to get back to having a bit of fun, I think, as well.
Exactly.
So those two movements, massively. And I mean, the pack on the back and the hiking, carrying heavy stuff, that works for me and Amber.
Just a quick question, and again, this isn't to trip up. I'm actually asking these questions because I'm quite intrigued by this. But I think that a question that I've got is I'm already wanting to do the squat tomorrow, if not tonight before I go to bed, by the way. And I'm really the toilet one's a massive one as well. I think these are all key things. Again, people potentially would go to the doctor with their poor bowel movements when realistically could try this and it could work for them. So I think the things you are saying tonight are very powerful. But this is just curiosity from my side, which is the evolution. Okay, so as we evolve, and again, I'm going to bring technology in, and again, I'm not talking about it within any other aspect than it just transitioning, like you say, sat at a desk on a screen or at different positions, or being in front of a screen. Just the way we are evolving and the impacts that has, not just on the world, but actually on our bodies, how our bodies are formed, the clothes we are wearing, the footwear, all these things. Okay, if they aren't stopped and we don't go backwards in a good way going forward, do you think there's going to be kind of like a bad end product, if that kind of makes sense? Do you think it has to be a fact that we not necessarily go backwards to live in the old way, but try to go backwards to live with the principles from an old way in today's time? What do you think would happen if that doesn't happen, and where evolution will go from that? And again, this isn't of me asking you to know the answer. It's just me asking what your theory potentially is on that, what your understanding could be.
Well, we have a theory, don't we?
Go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah.
I love it. It's like you know the answer.
Yeah. Well, this is it. So the word is beyond, isn't it? Beyond domestication.
Wow.
So the first part of the book, the whole intro to the book, talks about an animal called the auroch. Do you know what the auroch is, Ben?
I've not heard of the auroch, no. Please.
So you will have heard about the auroch, what we domesticated it into. So the auroch is the wild progenitor, the wild version of the cow, the cattle that we have today. So we domesticated this amazingly wild animal, long horns. There's the Lascaux caves in France with the cave drawings from like 8,000, 9,000 years ago. You know, picture those.
Yeah, I think I've heard of them.
That's the auroch in those pictures. And we killed the last one in 1627 in Poland. And this is an animal that I mentioned the word keystone earlier. When I talk about the beaver being a keystone species, that's because they help other animals to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
The cow, the auroch, is a keystone species because of the way it tills the soil when it moves through the land, along with horses, and they work together to till the land and move soil. And we've lost that keystone in the country, in Europe at least, and that job's now being done by the bison. But long story short, basically, the Nazis tried to bring back the auroch by breeding really angry cows with each other and trying to get cows. I know, this is true. Lutz and Heinz Heck, they were called, these two guys, and it's all about trying to get that master race, wasn't it? This is why they were doing it. I'm assuming anyway. And as far as they're concerned, it worked. We know it didn't, because you can test the DNA of these cattle that still exist. These Heck cattle, they still exist. People still breed them, and they're not the auroch. They're not the same, but they actually are performing a similar job. And so maybe that's our future as well, Ben. We know that we're domesticated. All you have to do is look at most of our teeth and our noses, and you can see that they're a lot smaller and a lot more crushed in than most other humans and most other people who are living a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, I should say. In a way, we're the pug compared to the grey wolf. Wow. The grey wolf is what the dog was domesticated from. And similar comparisons between the kind of what's happened to our teeth. I mean, I can look at my teeth. They're growing. My wisdom teeth grow sideways. My teeth are a little bit bunched up at the front. Our jaws are getting smaller with our diets changing. This is all domestication. I'm a domesticated human. Domestic George, that's me.
So from that answer, then, am I getting that there's a process that is correct with evolution, or are you saying that we should be trying to find the aspects that help us evolve or potentially don't have? I'm trying to define evolution there in terms of a way that isn't negative to our bodies and living, but at the same time, evolution is about potentially moving forward in a positive way to of growth.
It's hard to answer your question because we don't have a crystal ball and we can't look into the future. But I think what George is trying to get at is that the way that we are living our lives currently, if we live them for this way long enough, it will become permanent and irreversible. So my example personally is, I bet you look at your little finger where you hold your phone. I bet you got a little dent in here where your phone just rests so nicely into your little finger. And I bet everybody at home, give that a little try. If this is your hand that you hold your phone with, I bet you got a little dent in here where you hold your phone. And we're finding also that people's necks are hanging much more forward, pushing out forward because we look down at our phones all the time. So we're finding, that lots of people are having a lot more sort of back problems. Lots of people have knee problems and hip problems because we're not wearing the correct shoes. It's not just about bunions and your toes being the right shape, but actually it's that whole alignment that stems up from your feet, through your knees, through your hips, into your spine.
How you walk,
my personal opinion is that if we don't take better care of ourselves, then potentially we are doing irreversible damage. Same with lack of sleep. Sometimes it's worn as a badge of honor that you only get a couple of hours a night's sleep. That's really damaging in many, many ways, and it affects not only your mental and your physical health, but your gut. Lots of other knock-on effects from not paying attention to what we call the 7 practices. You might not love them all. You might not find a deep connection with every single one of the practices, but I urge people to go out there and consider their relationship with each of these practices and try something new. Find a connection that works for you, and I guarantee that you'll feel better for doing it. You'll feel empowered that you've taken control of your life. You've stopped sleeping and you've woke up and tried
started sleeping.
Started sleeping better. There's just, it's very difficult, and I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I think it's important that we use our minds a little bit more and we think about our connection to these things so that we know that we are doing the best for our future. I think in everybody's life at some point in time, health becomes our priority, either because you get ill or a loved one gets ill, or has some sort of physical issue. Why not start considering these things before it becomes an issue and before it becomes a problem? Prevention, rather than reaction. And that's what, for me and George, this has been, a lot of what the journey has been about.
And I have to just recognize it again, just having that platform of health to be able to work from. So lucky to have had that. And if it wasn't for the NHS, I would never have been in that position. Please, everybody listening to this, continue on your medication. But what else can you do actively? I wrote down to say, Ben, the first time my doctor asked me what I eat is when I got into remission, and he turned around to me and went, "What do you actually eat then?" And it was like, wait, you're asking me? Shouldn't you have asked me that 21 years ago?
21 years.
And so you're so right about challenging sort of the wisdom there. And obviously you've just gone through your big op as well, mate, which you've done amazingly with. So surrounding yourself for us with people with that scientific knowledge has been amazing. Someone I definitely will shout out, Dr. Ed Caddy on Instagram. Dr. Ed Caddy on Instagram, one of our advisors, an incredible medical doctor who will be out there barefoot watching the sun come up tomorrow. And so, yeah, he really gets it and is bringing in a lot of that sort of holistic health to people as well, helping the healthy to stay healthy. We can go beyond domestication. We absolutely can. I mean, all you've got to look at is the fact that we can drink milk now, a lot of us. That's something that we've adapted to over the last 10,000 years as we've domesticated animals and lived closer to them. And people have become more lactose tolerant, which is something that not everybody has, but we are changing as well.
We've lost the topic a little bit here, but in terms of, things that people at home can do if you are working remotely or working in an office, like you said, Ben, it's about having different options. Your standing desk is a great place to be. It's not to say that you have to stand there all day, and it's probably not healthy to stand there all day. Switch it up. Spend a couple of hours at the standing desk at your kitchen side, then sit at your table for a little bit. And then if you can sit on the floor, sit on the floor. Switch things up is always the best. Doing one thing continuously is less likely to be beneficial than having lots of different options. So if you're working from home, me and George live in a tiny little 60 square foot flat, but we still manage to have multiple spaces that we work from, and it's just the floor, a table and a kitchen side, and most of us have access to that. So just being a bit mindful about it and think, have I sat in this chair for too long? Maybe I should stand for a couple of hours. Okay, maybe I've stood for a couple of hours. I can sit on the floor and maybe work from there from now if I can. So yeah, there's lots of things that, it's simple tips that people can take away, and me and George just love to share them with people. So if there's anybody out there listening that wants to know more or has specific questions, then please reach out. We're so happy to help.
Please, yeah.
And in terms of just to kind of narrow in on this now, so one thing I've experienced this coming up through the fitness industry, which is when people try to incorporate new habits or come away from old behaviors and old habits, they struggle potentially to maintain them or even just to have the motivation to do them. And I think sometimes where I start with a lot of people with the work that I do is awareness. So before I try to transition a change, I just get them to be aware of what they are doing now before we transition that. If you can help someone understand now, they're going to start to look at these areas of their life. What do you think they should be most aware of in terms of before they make a transition in, if that kind of makes sense? So I
just think it's about just trial and error, try something. Does it feel good? If it does, try it again. Did it still feel good? And if it does, maybe that's going to work for you. And in terms of, having that motivation, we don't always have the motivation either. George has been doing a new stretch, and he can't get me to do it because I'm just not in the mood for it. And, that's fine. You don't always have to be ready for change, ready to be better. Sometimes it's just okay to just do you. I work for the campaign against living miserably, and we're doing a campaign at the moment that is just do something. And it's just about, if mindfulness to you is getting in the bath and eating a hot dog, do that. if it feels good, do it. But
that's not a real one.
It's not. It is not. But
I was going to say, is that the advent calendar?
And I think the other part is accountability. Find a partner, a friend, me and George,
us too,
somebody who can keep you
I'll hunt you down,
hold you
I'll
accountable.
keep you accountable.
A friend of mine is doing a challenge on Instagram at the moment. He's trying to beat his personal best on all different sorts of gym activities, and he has promised that he will live stream it every week when he goes to the gym. He's going to live stream, and he's going to promote his progress out there, and that's that accountability for him. And I'm not saying that has to be it for you, but maybe finding somebody to help hold you accountable can really help. George and I are lucky enough that we have each other to encourage each other to do the best that we can. Absolutely. When we feel like it. But yeah, I think it's just knowing what feels good. If it feels good, try and continue with it. If it doesn't, try something else. Book
a foraging course. Go with someone like Breatholution or you, Ben. Go and train in the Elements program and go and spend time in nature. Go camping. When was the last time you slept outside? Even glamping.
Something that George and I did a couple of years ago now, actually, that was really cool. And actually, I think we were just chilling in bed one morning and got onto this sort of topic of like, if you could do one thing in your life or be really good at one thing in your life, like what would that be? And we both sat there and we had to think for a little while. And George said, you know what, I'd really love to be able to like hunt one day, and I'd love to be able to shoot the bow and do some archery. And for me, it was, I've always been the sort of academic one, but actually I'd really love to be arty, and I'd love to be able to paint or do something creative. And so we both just encourage each other, sort of dared each other. Well, go on then, you book a foraging, you book an archery class, and I'll book an art class. And we did that. And, they've been hobbies for us ever since. And it's just about breaking those boundaries and going through that fear factor sometime of, I can't do that, I've never done it before, into, hey, do you know what? I can give it a try. And if it's a bit of a failure, but I enjoy it, I can try again and we can get better. So yeah, I dare everybody listening to think about something that you've always wanted or, thought was pretty cool in your life that you didn't think you were ever able to do. Just go and do it. Just seize the moment and, live for the now. And I'm pretty sure you won't regret it.
I mean, you should be a motivational speaker, honestly. There's been a few bits tonight I've just been taken back listening to you, think, fucking hell, I hope everyone's going to jump up and do it now. Fuck it, I'm about to go. But that's really powerful, because I think one thing that I try to get across is mindset in terms, and I think you've summed up your mindset towards is very well in the speech you've just given there, Amber. And I think that I'm a big believer in surrounding yourself with the right people, whether that, again, you've got a supportive partner, whether that is the people that are closest to you, but I also put within that bracket the people you're following on social media, the people you are reading and listening to, the people you are watching. If you can transition that to be the direction you want to go, that does start to become motivation. That does start to become accountability in a way as well. You start to find the right people. So I hope that anyone watching tonight can follow you guys. Can you just tell everyone where they can find you and give as much details around the course and how they can contact you for the free coaching as well? And guys, just one last thing before you do that, just please correct me if I'm wrong, but you do offer this for both individuals and is there a business aspect as well as on your website? Is that correct? Where you help businesses? Is that
absolutely
right?
Yeah. So business, organizations, anybody like that, we do a whole wellbeing and work arm. For context, Amber is level 7 CIPD qualified. That's the Chartered Institute of Professional Development. So people and operations guru. So we do consulting for businesses from wellbeing's perspective, helping them to basically allow their people to do 3 things: communicate more effectively, be more creative, and be better at critical thinking. So we help from that perspective with organizations. We do direct training as well. But this year, actually, the push is all about individuals. We've recognized in our own work, both working with organizations and individuals, that probably the most emotional relationships and the most effective things we've done have been face-to-face or one-on-one with people. So yeah, absolutely, we want to promote right now with you and your group. Something we've just launched for free this month is our coaching program, where everybody can get an hour free with us, either as 2 half-an hours or 1 hour, whatever you want to do. And we'll give the whole course away for free as well, which is 7 10-minute lessons into rewilding your well-being and productivity and work, which everybody will be free to access as well. And it's all available through our website. To be honest, it's best just to go there, beyond-domestication.com, or Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn. We're everywhere. Facebook. Yeah.
So all the social medias, but if you check out the website, it has everything that we're currently doing. All of our offerings are sort of all up there. And as I say, there's blogs and additional information. We're also on YouTube. You might find if you're looking to unwind and relax, we've got some nice videos on there of us out hiking and camping. And it's just lots of bird noise, the rain, all of the elements. And they're really calming and relaxing as well.
Amber's a horse whisperer, basically. So it's just Amber stroking wild horses in the New Forest and deer and mushrooms and all this kind of lovely stuff.
But yeah, if you just search for Beyond Domestication across any of the social platforms, you'll stumble across us, and drop a message and say hi. And if you want us to hold you accountable, if your aim is to start your own business and you want to start promoting that on Instagram weekly, but you don't have the motivation to promote it, let us know. We'll send you a weekly message saying, hey, I haven't seen you post yet. We're here to help people, and it is really important to us. So
someone did that for me when I was writing the book. The guy called Simon Scriver, who runs an organization called Fundraising Everywhere, said, let me know if you want to do something and I'll catch up with you next year. And he did. And I had written the book. which was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Manifestation, isn't it? Mindfulness, gratitude, writing things down.
Yeah.
The picture that we have on our website for BeOne Domestication, we stuck on the inside of our wardrobe door 4 years ago.
Wow.
Of course we did,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's
Visualize,
of course
realize.
we did. Yeah. So that's mindfulness, isn't it? Visualization, realization.
I'm a big believer. Again, the guy that do Going in Deep with my podcast partner, Ollie, and obviously Liam as well, the producer. And we're big believers in manifestation, big believers in visualization, goal setting, in getting something into your mind and then it coming through. But I also just think it's about empowering people. And I think what you two guys are doing in general is amazing. I think not just the passion that's coming through, but the passion to help people. And also like the things you've come out with, just even at the end there, which is helping people be accountable, man. This is your time that you give up to help other people, and time's a crucial thing. And I think that's a beautiful thing to give. And it's something that's transitioned my life. The more I've given positively to impact other people, it's actually helped me as well. And I think it's a big circle. And one last thing I wanted to touch on in terms of is that I think there is a shift. I've truly seen this as much as a lot of the social norm is what it potentially is known for. I have started to see a massive shift over the last 3 to 5 years of more awareness around just being again, whether that is within mindfulness and meditation, whether that is within going back to the foods that are best for our bodies, whether that is movement patterns or being outside and all these kind of things. And again, cold water and breathwork's blown up over the last 2 years, but it's not. But the science has come with it, and in fact, and the amazing thing is, and if you speak to Kev, who I now call Alexa because of his wealth of knowledge, the stuff he's talking about. He talks about it being hundreds and thousands of years ago, and it just got filtered out. And everything that's being taught now is being retaught. It's not new; it's being retaught. And I just feel that there is a wave now that's transitioning people. And I truly hope the question I posed you before is a positive one in terms of where we do evolve to. We are going to evolve, but I do think that I'm hoping that it is a positive thing. And I think guys like yourselves are making that impact on this world. So absolute fair play. Can't thank you enough for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
I think you've given a lot of information alone on the show. But guys, I'm going to be talking about these guys coming up, and I'm hoping that I will be meeting them in person soon enough as well. So I'll be in contact with you guys as well. But for now, I just want to say thank you massively for coming on. And I'm sure the viewers will agree. It's been a phenomenal show. So guys, I'm going to drop George and Amber backstage and just wrap it up. But George and Amber, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you, everybody.
It's been a pleasure. Cheers,
guys. Thank you. Yes, guys. So episode number 6 of the Mindset Tune-Up show wrapped up. And that was interesting. That was intriguing. I actually had potentially a lot more questions to ask there, but I felt my questions were taking the conversation away from BeOne Domestication, which is where I wanted that label to be tonight, to let them express what they built. And you can one thing I really felt then, you could truly see the passion in both Amber and George in terms of what they were talking about. The knowledge was standout, but the passion as well, not just for rewilding in the 7 practices, but just for helping people. And I love the fact that they were literally saying they will hold you accountable, because that's a big thing. Like, so many people could take that up, and I'm pretty guaranteed that they would hold everyone accountable as well. But my question to you is, would you dare do that? Why not contact Amber and George? Why not think about something that you've heard tonight that you want to implement, whether it's one of the 7 practices, which I hope it is, reflect on what your current situation is within them, and then understand how you could potentially change that, and reach out to them, tell them what you were going to do, and ask them to hold you accountable. They've given that. And again, 3 hours worth of coaching. And I'm not upselling here because I've got no benefit to this, but I'm saying for 2 people to offer an hour's worth of coaching to something that can truly transform your life in a positive way is absolutely massive. Plus, we've got a free course. So there are people out there, guys, in this world doing amazing things to try and help people. And I truly hope people start to capitalize on what is out there. So guys, that for me was an amazing show to come back into after a few weeks break. So I can't thank Amber and George enough. Please do check them out, give them a follow, and I'll be repurposing some of tonight's talk again because I think it was massively valuable. But for now, I'm going to leave you to it, guys. We will be back next week. Keep an eye on my social channels to check who is on next. Nothing but love, guys, and I will speak to you soon.